all the news on any given day, you're apt to see stories about college kids doing lunatic things, incomprehensible things. Well, for the past couple of weeks, we've invited a lot of college kids on this show to find out why they're doing them and what can be done to help. We're joined now by a man who's thought a lot about this topic and may have some answers. He is the famed TV show host, Mike Rowe. Mike, great to see you.
Hey, Tucker, how are you?
I'm really well, and also a little confused. So we had this conversation the other night with a guy from Hampshire College, a student there, where there was a flag burning incident where they pulled the flag down in protest against American imperialism, etc. And I asked him, why is it only expensive liberal arts colleges where this kind of thing happens? And here's what he said. Watch. You never see anybody at a trade school burning the American flag. Have you noticed that? I'm not making this up in my mind, am I?
I think that you're more likely to pick up a story in which rich kids do burn a flag on the basis that we have more access to the media. I mean, like, the flag burning wasn't
really? So you think it like your average HVAC repair school, they're burning the flag?
Well, I believe,
there is something
as you and me both know,
the
politics of this country are divided by class.
You would actually know the answer to this. Are they burning American flags at HVAC repair schools, at trade schools?
I've never seen one, but look, I haven't been to all of them. I've been to a lot of them. My foundation works pretty closely with them, and I heard you ask that question, and I saw that interview when it aired, and, you know, my first thought, just sitting home, was nobody's disputing the right to do any of this stuff, but
well, sure.
For me, it's a matter of persuasion, right? Is it persuasive to burn a symbol that you know so many people care so much about? It's a great way to get attention, but I'm not personally convinced it's a great way to make people think differently about whatever it is you believe and however it is you might feel.
Well, and that's such a good and obvious point that's so rarely made that it makes you wonder, is it a good idea? This is something you've been talking about for many years. Is it a good idea to expect that every child in America gets a 4-year liberal arts education? Maybe for a lot of kids, is counterproductive.
Well, look, if you're running for office or if you're trying to say something in a soundbite that applies to lots and lots of people, it's easy to say a 4-year degree is the best path for the most people.
Right.
And if you're running for office, as so many people seem to be, that's what you hear year after year, again and again and again. And pretty soon, after 40 years of it, we start to believe it. We start to believe that the best path for the most people happens to also be the most expensive path. And it also happens to be the path that has led to a skills gap of about 5.8 million positions and student loans at about 1.3 trillion. And sooner or later, somebody's got to throw the flag, so to speak, and say, maybe there's another way.
Maybe there is. So you've spent a lot of time on this subject. You have a foundation that helps kids who are looking for another way. In all the years you've been watching, what are the attitudes that prevent young people from finding success and happiness?
I mean, that's such an existential, sociological, heavy thing, and I'm glad you asked. I'm not an expert, but I think it's this idea that there's a dream job out there. You know, we're told from the very, very beginning that if you want to be happy, then you have to be doing the thing that will make you happy. And so we embark on this quest for happiness that has everything to do with attaining that which we've previously determined will cause bliss, right? It's sort of like looking for your soulmate as opposed to trying to find happiness in your zip code. You know, we just make it so hard. And so if you decide really, really early that the only way I'm going to be happy is to be an American Idol, then you're going to stand in line and you're going to audition, and maybe it's going to be a little disappointing when one of the judges tells you at 20 years of age for the first time in your life that no, you can't do this. And so there's just a disconnect. You know, the opportunities that exist today, and the big lesson that I learned on Dirty Jobs and in other places was that if you chase the opportunities that are there and then figure out a way to be good at them and then figure out a way to love them, you'll be amazed at how stuff lines up.
So, I mean, being useful is a key to happiness, isn't it? People want to feel like they're adding to the sum total of goodness in the world. I mean, there's a practical streak in people, and when you're good at something, you derive pleasure and satisfaction from it, don't you?
Yeah, meaningful work is very different than drudgery. And one of the things that continually surprised people with the kind of shows I do is that we try and find people who aren't doing jobs that are traditionally aspirational, but who have nevertheless prospered and found real contentment doing it. That was the real thing about Dirty Jobs, and Somebody's Got to Do It, that freaked viewers out again and again, over and over. It wasn't the fact that the jobs existed or that people were doing them. It was how much fun people were having and how much meaning and how much joy was being extracted from stuff that we've been trained to believe was some sort of vocational consolation prize. It's a big disconnect and kind of a pernicious lie, and bit by bit we try and chip away at it.
Well, it's a massive disconnect. I mean, it really does seem like the society sends a pretty clear message to young people, especially smart young people. If you're really talented, you go into finance. Like, that's kind of foregone, right? That's what you do. Is that a healthy thing?
Right. Well, I think it's always unhealthy to suggest that heads is more interesting than tails. You know, blue collar is less interesting than white collar. It's all these things. You know, people talk about the skills gap like it's a great mystery, and personally, I think it's really just a reflection of rewarding the behavior that we've been rewarding. So we want something better for our kids than what we had, but we don't really know what better means.
Yes.
And in an effort not to screw things up too badly, as parents, a lot of people, I think, sort of default to some non-existent playbook. And in that playbook, there's a list of things to do in order to make sure you don't screw your kid up. And one of those things to do is to make sure you get them into a good school. Now, here's where it gets really crazy in my view. Every time I say things like this in defense of trade schools, what comes back over the net is Mike is, you know, this weird anti-college kind of thing, and it's nothing further from the truth. But what struck me about the interview you played before wasn't just the fact that, you know, that guy had his opinion. It was the fact that they're paying $62,000 a year, right? So times 4 for $250,000. $250,000. It's either worth it or it's not. You can either afford it or you can't, and we're either helping to subsidize it or we aren't. Well, we are. And so consequently, even though I don't go to that school, and even though I respect the people who do, I feel like we ought to have permission to have a conversation about, forgive me, I know this rankles people, but it's a return on our investment too. Because that $1.3 trillion, it's not falling out of the air. We're paying for it.
It's the medieval church. You just give your money and be quiet. Shut up and obey. Mike Rowe, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.